Good evening. Many observers are currently framing the unfolding situation along the Iran-Pakistan border as a strategic workaround for Tehran's maritime challenges. However, a closer examination reveals this interpretation may be fundamentally flawed, overlooking the profound and potentially self-destructive implications of Iran's desperate measures. Hundreds of motorcycles are advancing across the Baluchistan desert from Iran into Pakistan, carrying the regime's own oil. Along the border, boats loaded with fuel canisters are passing through narrow waterways. 5 to 6 million liters of Iranian oil are crossing the border for free every day through these primitive convoys. More than 3,000 containers are stuck in Pakistani ports. Oil wells are on the verge of shutting down. Millions of dollars worth of oil is becoming the loot of black market smugglers. And Iran's Revolutionary Guards, the very structure that has been boasting about its maritime dominance for years, is now forced to beg Pakistan to stop it. This unprecedented scale of informal cross-border oil flow, effectively sanctioned by necessity, represents a significant departure from historical patterns of state-controlled resource management. It underscores a profound erosion of central authority, transforming a strategic asset into a black market commodity under duress, a scenario rarely witnessed in modern state-level economic crises. It all started when the United States Navy effectively shut down Iranian ports beginning April 13, 2026. This triggered a devastating wave of chaos and a logistics crisis inside Iran that proved nearly impossible to absorb. Ships can no longer dock at Iranian ports, and cargo is jammed either at sea or on the Pakistani side. According to Al-Azhar's April 24th report, more than 3,000 containers are waiting at the ports of Karachi and Gwadar. Cranes and warehouses at the ports sit idle. Workers have been left jobless. The local economy has contracted because Iran's oil storage facilities are filled to the brim with nowhere to go. Once the valves close, the laws of physics kick in, and those veteran wells may fail to reach sufficient pressure and could shut down. The regime is trying to rescue these containers and oil by land as a last resort. But the fracture in the chain from ports to factories continues. It was right in the middle of this desperation that Iran reached out to the neighbor it had belittled for years, Pakistan, and begged for a land bridge. Pakistan's Transit of Goods Through Territory of Pakistan Order 2026, enacted on April 25, 2026, defined 6 official land routes. The regime marketed this as a strategic victory. Revolutionary Guard Corps commanders are running propaganda saying, "We've broken the blockade." But the reality was actually very different and painful. This land bridge, presented as salvation, actually looks more like the regime's strategic suicide. The 6 routes in reality consist of difficult roads through mountainous, rugged terrain. And on top of that, they are filled with very serious security risks because all of these routes pass through Baluchistan's rugged terrain. And according to the National's May 1st analysis, land transportation is 10 to 12 times more expensive than shipping by sea. This dramatic cost differential fundamentally alters the economic calculus for a nation under sanctions, pushing an already strained system towards unsustainable expenditure. Historically, land routes have offered strategic alternatives, but this specific cost burden suggests a logistical desperation that negates any perceived strategic advantage, turning a bypass into a financial drain. To match the volume a single tanker carries in one voyage, you need hundreds of trucks, a massive burden in both time and cost. Customs procedures at the Taftan and Gab border crossings are slowing shipments even further. Each container's transit requires incashable bank guarantees and Federal Board of Revenue procedures, a process that can take days or even weeks. So, the regime is trying to compensate its defeat at sea on land. But the picture it faces may be even worse than the sea. The triple combination of 10 times the cost, bureaucratic obstacles, and rugged terrain could transform this corridor from a victory into a new dead end. And before these official routes can even get past their bureaucratic nightmare, an entirely different kind of traffic is flowing on the other side of the border. Since April 25th, videos that went viral on social media show hundreds of motorcycles advancing from Iran into Pakistan across Baluchistan's rugged terrain. Footage from May 3rd shows long queues formed at informal crossing points like Pir Khor. These convoys kicking up dust clouds on desert roads stand in complete contradiction with the Revolutionary Guard Corps' claims of border control. According to DW's Baluchistan Smuggling Report, 5 to 6 million liters of fuel are flowing into Pakistan through these informal routes every day. The method is extremely primitive but effective. Motorcycles, pickups, and small boats along the border bypass all the bureaucracy of the official routes, crossing without customs or controls. The timing of this smuggling explosion is noteworthy. After the Hormuz blockade, the Revolutionary Guard Corps' entire focus has been on survival and staying alert against United States-Israeli strikes. Its resources to dedicate to border security are already limited. And in this vacuum, the smuggling networks exploded. The price of subsidized fuel in Iran is less than half the market price in Pakistan. The profit margin this creates generates a massive pull for smuggling. On the Pakistani side, local tribal networks facilitate this traffic. At some points, security forces are alleged to be turning a blind eye through bribes or political directives. The border region around Taftan and Gabd is riddled with hundreds of informal paths and tribal connections across mountainous and desert terrain. Smugglers bypass customs points by making short-distance crossings at night or in foggy weather. And there is a critical comparison here. The official route is expensive and slow. Smuggling is fast and profitable. While official trucks wait for days at customs, motorcycle smugglers transport the same fuel across the border in hours. This situation overshadows the official land corridor entirely. Though the regime blames the smuggling on foreign agents, in reality, it appears to be merely watching its own stockpiles erode. Revolutionary Guard Corps commanders are sending report after report to Tehran, but their capacity to stop this lawlessness at the border may have already vanished. As losses worth billions of dollars mount, the Revolutionary Guard Corps' claim of border security has already collapsed in practice. When we examine Pakistan's role in this picture, an interesting structure emerges. According to Al-Azhar's April 30th analysis, Islamabad doesn't appear to be content with just transit fees and logistics revenue. It is indirectly strengthening the China-Pakistan economic corridor by reviving the Gwadar port and consolidating its position as a regional transit hub, while earning serious revenue from every container through official corridors. It is also turning a blind eye to the smuggling networks because the flow of cheap Iranian fuel into Pakistan sustains the livelihoods of thousands of Baluch families. A complete shutdown could trigger social unrest in Baluchistan. This tolerance has become a strategic tool. Pakistan is simultaneously earning diplomatic points by appearing to help Iran, maintaining public support by keeping domestic fuel prices low, and gaining geopolitical leverage by opening a land corridor to Iran while staying close to the United States and Gulf allies. And it is protecting China's China-Pakistan economic corridor investments. In short, while Iran displays its desperation in this corridor, Pakistan appears to emerge as the party turning Iran's helplessness to its own advantage. As the regime allocates resources to protect convoys, Pakistan profits from both official transit and smuggling. The security dimension of these routes could create a separate nightmare for the regime. But we may need to take a closer look at what these 6 routes actually mean. The first route from Gwadar to the Gabed border crossing is the shortest line, but full of rugged terrain and security risks. The second route from Karachi through Liari, Omara, and Pasni to Gabd follows the coastline, but multiplies the logistics burden at mountain passes. The third line through Kuzdar, Dalbendin, and Taftan heads inland. It includes nodes like Keita and creates a heavy load in terms of distance. The fourth and fifth routes from Gwadar through Turbat, Hoshab, Pangur, Nag, Besima, Kuzda, and Keita to Taftan form a long and heavy transportation chain. The sixth route aims to ease interport transit with a Karachi-Gwadar-Gabd combination. However, as we just mentioned, all routes harbor very serious security risks due to historical hostilities and Iran's complex ethnic structure. The Baluchistan Liberation Army, according to Special Eurasia's report, struck 18 separate points in coordinated attacks in early 2026 and mobilized around 500 militants. Gwadar, Turbat, Taftan, and Keita, the very nodes these land routes pass through, are already sensitive zones from the Baluchistan Liberation Army's past operations. According to the New York Times' May 3rd report, the Baluchistan Liberation Army views both Pakistani and Iranian cooperation as occupation and targets the land routes as extensions of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. They are assessed to have the capacity to hit bridges, depots, or convoys with improvised explosive devices. In the event of a seizure or sabotage, cargo worth thousands of containers could fall into the hands of insurgents, a potential loss of both material and prestige for the regime. And there is a human dimension to these risks as well. According to Iran International's April 20th report, truck drivers carry the scars of the 2025 strikes. They had shut down roads in 40 cities over low wages, quota restrictions, and insurance problems. Now those same drivers face additional costs and security risks on the new routes. Long queues at the Pakistan-Iran border are increasing spare part shortages. Though the Revolutionary Guard Corps tries to deploy drivers to protect convoys, such pressure has the potential to trigger new backlash. The truckers, whom the regime calls its logistics heroes, are in reality the segment bearing the system's weight and approaching the breaking point. And there is yet another dimension. The United States is currently not placing direct obstacles on this land corridor, but this appears to be a strategic choice. Even with land routes in play, the United States' monitoring capacity makes convoys and roads inside Iran potential pressure points. Washington can shut down the routes by pressuring Pakistan whenever it wants. Or, with an even harsher move, striking a strategic bridge in the mountains inside Iran, it could cut all flow in a single stroke. Trump's previously stated approach of, "we'll hit every bridge and power plant," could directly target the roads and bridges these convoys use. Instead of hitting convoys one by one, closing main arteries and logistics nodes could be enough to collapse the Revolutionary Guard Corps' entire land logistics plan. One reason the United States may currently be allowing this could be to balance Pakistan's double game. This situation leaves Iran even more helpless, while providing the United States with wide room to maneuver. The cost of transportation, 10 times more expensive, appears to be further eroding the regime's already fragile economy, and financing this cost is becoming increasingly difficult. According to the Wall Street Journal's March 5th report, the United Arab Emirates' move to freeze Iranian assets has cut the regime's financial networks in the Gulf. Abu Dhabi's alignment with the United States is weakening the Revolutionary Guard Corps' shadow financing mechanisms. The domestic impact of this geo-economic isolation inside Iran is severe. According to El Pais's March 4th report, bread lines have lengthened in metropolises like Tehran and Isfahan. Farmers cannot deliver their products to market. The spare parts and fuel shortages for truck drivers are creating serious stagnation in the logistics sector. According to the Jerusalem Post's Iran Domestic Political Analysis, the transport of industrial raw materials from ports to factories has come to a near halt. Strike calls from labor unions are creating alarming stagnation in industrial zones. When rising costs, smuggling losses, financial isolation, and internal economic collapse come together, the land corridor may be transforming from a relief into a deepening economic trap for the regime. The regime's self-sufficiency rhetoric in an environment where it is dependent on Pakistan appears to have completely rotted. However, while the regime remains dependent on Pakistan on land and is being driven toward economic suicide, it is also on the verge of completely losing its greatest strength at sea. The United Arab Emirates' freezing of financial assets was in fact merely the first step in a much larger and more ruthless geostrategic operation designed to corner Iran. The real target of this oil strike is not the regime's center. It is the Revolutionary Guards. The truly lethal detail behind the United Arab Emirates' strategic maneuver is the full capacity activation of the Fujairah pipeline, physically bypassing the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's "we will close the strait" threat, used recklessly for years against the Western world and regional rivals, has been rendered invalid in a single move thanks to this approximately 400-kilometer modern infrastructure project. This massive line, which provides a safe flow directly from Abu Dhabi to the Sea of Oman, is moving roughly 1.8 million barrels of oil per day, completely outside Iran's mining and harassment range. The operationalization of the Fujairah pipeline at this critical juncture represents a profound strategic realignment, effectively neutralizing Iran's long-standing geopolitical leverage over the Strait of Hormuz. This infrastructure bypass fundamentally redefines regional energy security, diminishing Iran's capacity for maritime coercion in a manner that few historical precedents can match. The regime's doctrine of holding the global economy hostage by closing the strait has been openly debunked on the ground by the United Arab Emirates' independent supply chain offensive. The strategic value of this bypass move is not limited to safe oil transport. It also zeroes out Iran's naval military deterrence. The Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy's fast attack boats and submarine fleet will no longer be able to find the Western or Gulf origin critical tankers in the narrow waters of Hormuz. This logistical shift effectively renders the coastal defense systems and anti-ship missiles into which the regime poured billions of dollars blind and deaf. The shift of tanker traffic to the Sea of Oman into the wider waters under the direct protective umbrella of the American Fifth Fleet makes the Revolutionary Guard Corps' piracy operations impossible. The enormous operational freedom provided by the Fujairah line carries the United Arab Emirates to the position of the region's undisputed energy leader while demolishing Iran's regional hegemony dreams. The Tehran leadership, which for years offered fake displays of power on television screens, shouting, "We will close the strait, we will freeze the world," will no longer be able to use this cheap rhetoric. The Strait of Hormuz is no longer a power projection zone for Iran. It is a cursed waterway where its own oil is trapped and rotting. It is now inevitable that any crisis in the Strait of Hormuz will hit Iran rather than the United Arab Emirates or its Western allies, because Iran has no alternative route for exporting its oil. This asymmetric transformation means that Tehran's biggest geopolitical card has been reduced to an ordinary bluff, and the regime has fallen into a trap that boomerangs back on itself. In this context, it is highly likely that the Strait of Hormuz will turn from a force multiplier into a passive route where Iran's own energy resources are confined to a logistical bottleneck. This strategic narrowing may weaken internal authority and create psychological ground for social mobilization. This is a massive hammer coming down on the income backbone of the Iranian regime, on the Revolutionary Guard Corps' proxy financing, and on the dictatorship that uses Hormuz as a weapon. The motorcycles continue their advance across the Baluchistan desert, with millions of liters of fuel crossing the border daily, a flow the Revolutionary Guards appear powerless to halt. While the regime attempts to frame this land corridor as a significant victory, the accumulated evidence suggests a starkly different reality. 3,000 containers remain stranded. Transportation costs are 10 times higher, the Baluchistan Liberation Army poses a credible threat to convoys, and truck drivers are reportedly nearing a breaking point. Furthermore, the United Arab Emirates has severed critical financial networks, the United States retains the capacity to halt all flow with a single strategic strike, and Pakistan is demonstrably leveraging this chaos to its own advantage, securing transit revenue, tolerating smuggling, strengthening the China-Pakistan economic corridor, and deepening Iran's dependency. The Revolutionary Guard's attempt to compensate for its maritime defeat on land may not be an escape, but rather a deepening trap. This land bridge, far from being a salvation for the regime, could ultimately be recorded as a new front, accelerating its eventual decline.